So today's topic is enthusiasm. Do later tiers of development change in enthusiasm? As I started this video, I tried to be enthusiastic. It's not easy as of late. So the question is, are they enthusiastic? So in Greek, enthusiasm is enthusiasmos.
Ενθουσιασμός.
Okay? So what that means, apparently, the derivatives mean possessed by God. I just learned that today. And it's basically saying you have this aura that is like supernatural when you are enthusiastic. And it could explain why it's contagious, could explain partially why people like it. Now, as you ascend, in my understanding, enthusiasm doesn't go away, it just evolves, it changes. Okay? So I find that I'm not enthusiastic in the way I used to be, because in stage clear, what I find is you don't care to be enthusiastic or not enthusiastic. So if you don't care and nothing is exciting, you won't be enthusiastic. If something is exciting, you'll be into it. So people say, oh, if you're excited, that means you're attached. And if you're attached, that means you're probably in stage orange. You're interested in your job and making money and believing it's all you doing the action, right? The more masculine stages, it's always a proactive stance. In some regard, it changes and evolves with ever-increasing complexity, right? But the idea is it's more about me. Now, that's not necessarily true and not necessarily false. So the thing I just thought of today is that enthusiasm comes from the bottom left quadrant. The bottom left quadrant is emotions. It relates to people, how you think about people. The reason why you understand people is because you have this power, this battery that says, I want to get along with others. I want to be on par with others. I want to think like others. It's a desire to relate, but not to conform. It's to conform if needed, but the relating aspect is more important. So as such, the enthusiasm is derived from there, and it's powered by a desire to relate to others. So if you want to relate to others, you'll be more enthusiastic. Now, what I find is that in stage clear, you lose this enthusiasm. So what happened? Are you in the upper right quadrant? So my explanation is no. When you get to these high tiers, it's not like you're hyper-intellectualizing. It's just sometimes we need to hyper-intellectualize not to get pulled down by stage orange. So in this society, you might end up becoming upper right in order to counteract all the garbage that says you need to worry about this person's opinion, you need to focus on this. So it's a balancing act by the unconscious mind, meaning the more of a community you have who are evolved, the less need you will be to be hyperlogical. Someone recently commented on my Twitter account. You can follow me if you want. It's where I just say what's on my mind. And he said that this deity is a real deity from Africa, and all you Europeans have corrupted the history. But really, what's going on is this guy was surrounded by stage purple. He probably had mystical experiences. He's probably tapping into stage coral, and he's balancing both extremes of the pre-trans and the post-trans. And that kind of happened to me a bit in stage coral. I had certain experiences. I said, everyone's lying, everyone's BSing. And so I said, screw the upper right quadrant. Logic doesn't matter. Okay, so I rejected logic entering into stage coral. And I believe that happens when you don't want to let go of your religious upbringing because you know it's true. But at the same time, you also know it's BS, and you need a reason for that. And you're looking for reasons for why you know it's BS. So the upper right, it changes. The way you view reality changes, and unless you can get a whole group to think like you, which won't happen in America, you will not succeed in doing that. So what most people they're going to do is they're going to try to create their own cult in stage coral, or like-mindedness. It's not a bad thing. You're trying to get people to think like you, so everyone thinks like each other, right? It's not a cult per se, but it's actually, that's how the mind works. so that the reality in the past was always that way. But you're not going to succeed because the upper right quadrant is too strong. So you're not going to be able to create the reality in the past the way you believe it currently. So what's going to happen is most people entering into Coral are going to adopt the upper right quadrant as much as they can in order to facilitate the upper left. Now, in order to have enthusiasm, because that's the topic, it's always powered by the bottom left. It's your desire to be on par with people and to get along with people and to be united with people, for people to understand you and for you to understand them. Okay? It's not for them to change. It's not for you to change. It's just to have common ground. Okay, now that we established that, if you can't get people to be on par with you, you'll be frustrated. And so you won't have much bottom left, right? And you're still in the middle of defending. So basically, once you get into tier 2 and above, you won't be as enthusiastic because it's just not working for you. So when does enthusiasm return? Classically, the way Tony Robbins is enthusiastic, it doesn't really come back. Unless you had a community that thought like you and that supported the way you think about things. But unfortunately, it's not the way it is. It doesn't happen that way. There's very few people who understand what I'm saying. And when you do, it's a delight. But the moment you understand what I'm saying, what's there to create a group about? You know? There's no point in having a group. So if there's no need to have like-mindedness and there's no encouragement to have like-mindedness, you never have this community that gets built around within these upper tiers. And so there's no enthusiasm, there's no zeal, there's no spice. Like, oh, I'm excited about this. Now, I wake up every morning and I read a whole book. I guess you can say I'm excited about that. I don't take it so seriously. I don't not take it seriously. I enjoy it and I like it. I don't believe in jumping up and down for joy. Now, the question I think people would be interested in is, when was the last time I've jumped up and down for joy? I'm just laughing because I think that happened recently. I think I found out that I had some extra cookies in my freezer or something. So I was it's like, yeah! Or I found out that I had extra money in my Snap card. So I literally jumped like 3 feet in the air. Supernatural jumps, right? And that happened because of excitement. It only lasted 3 to 5 seconds. And I don't think life is about those exciting moments. But they don't happen very often. It's just when something I don't expect, something that it's a delight, right? Now, it may have been different cases, and it may have been a couple things, and I was excited about something small, but it was powered by those couple things. But whatever it was, I get excited, but it's very momentary, and it's not very often. So I'm basically like this the whole time. So another question is that autism? And people don't seem to say I'm autistic, so I don't think it's autism. And another question you can ask is, when you reach high tiers, do you become upper right quadrant? Do you become hyper intellectual? And like I said, it's a coping mechanism. You want to start a new belief system in Coral, but no one's going to accept you. It's not going to happen. It just doesn't seem to be that way for many reasons. You're on defensive, right? And so enthusiasm is not destined to really return until Aubergine, when you're content in life. Now, I listened to the audiobook of Ken Wilber's giant boulder of a book. I forgot what it was called. It was good. I actually think Ken Wilber's introduction in 2000 was better, only because it gives you a nice brief overview, and the developed mind can extrapolate anything, so you don't need all this fluffy stuff. But, it was a lot of good stuff in there. What did he say? What was the point that we're trying to bring out? And stage Aubergine or stage ultraviolet is enthusiastic for life. So my experience was not enthusiastic, rather it was presence. So the more present you are, the more you appreciate it. So if you're in a better mood, you'll be enthusiastic. But if you're not in a better mood, your stage ultraviolet will not necessarily be enthusiastic. And also, it's a stage of action. So from an outside perspective, you're just do, right? So that could be interpreted as enthusiasm. I was just thinking about, I was tapping into the collective unconscious. There are a few people who say, oh, this guy's stage yellow, right? There are people in the past that have been tempted to say, oh, this guy is stage blue. Or this guy's in stage green. Because all of a sudden I'm becoming like seemingly pro-LGBT, and it was just coincidence, I never really had a preference. And recently I've been meeting people that, okay, that are either trans or LGBT. I'm like, you know what, I kind of understand them. Or non-binary, which is LGBT, right? But it's non-binary is a whole different thing. It's a whole different ballgame. You don't like labels. That's what non-binary means. But the point is, like, doesn't mean I'm entering into green. It means like, okay, I understand where they're coming from. I'm not enthused about LGBT. I'm not in a cult. So stage green is usually make sure this is running. Stage green is usually in the bottom right quadrant. They usually gravitate to conformity mindedness. And so conformity mindedness is not a problem. It's only a problem when when you're trying to put others down for those beliefs. If you go against the group. So therefore, generally speaking, you want to be as close to the center line as possible. So you don't want too much bottom right quadrant. And many religious people, they forget that bottom right quadrant is not ideal, and they become rigid about the bottom right quadrant. And forgetting that they fear their ego, they fear the collective ego more than they fear God. And that gets into a whole philosophical discussion of what is God. God is actually the non-ego. And we're worshiping the ego thinking it's God because the value system of bottom right quadrant is the collective standard, which is created by the ego. So if that's the case, they're doomed to kind of worship the devil, so to speak, or the without calling it that, because God has to use the devil in order to navigate. So people agree with the agenda of the positive side. Now, sounds like a belief system, but it's archetypal stuff. It's happening beneath the consciousness. When you die, you're going to be a soul, and you're going to understand what I'm saying. Now, the reality is contingent on the believer as well. So it's two sides of the coin. Yes, there is no thing, but then there's also something. And if you have any attachment to anything, it stays relevant. The only one who's not attached to is the Zen master. But if you're not a Zen master, you're pretending to be, why neglect what you probably already believe in? Some people may think I'm like a bodhisattva. I know all the truths, but I'm still feeding into duality. You can argue that. There's also another thing called Mahasamta or something. Someone who has supernatural powers, but is not a Zen master. It's in an Alan Watts book. You can check out my TikTok. I have it there. But people might be throwing out these labels about me because I mentioned different things. And maybe I fit these labels, maybe I don't. But the point is, if you're not holding somewhere, don't try to be there. It's like if you think Zen mastery is the ideal, you're going to have a lot of wake-up calls. Like, many people wake up to the fact that Zen masters are not nice people because they know you're chasing your tail. There are multiple states of consciousness. That's just a reality. I've had a Satori where, where it's like, what is God? Like, what are you? What am I? And all of a sudden you're like, it's impossible to know. And then all of a sudden you kind of like have an out-of-body experience. I did, at least. That was my experience of Satori. And I just felt that peace. There's nothing to look for. It was like a truth. It wasn't a chase. It was a truth. This is what it is. Also, when you die, when your ego dies or you die in the next world, in this astral realm, there's nothing to chase anymore. Like, what? So it's even better when you die because there's no more attachment. So hopefully my video doesn't shut down, because sometimes people hear this and they're like, oh, I heard keywords death at the end of say, let's shut his computer down. So I hope not. If so, I'm going to upload it anyways. So they don't do this in the future. They have all kinds of shenanigans that they don't tell us about. But yeah, death is better than life in the sense that there's no more attachments. Now, I'm very attached. I get really cranky and annoyed when I'm not shooting videos. Because I'm not shooting videos, I obviously don't have the spirit guiding my words and my thoughts, and my actions and my intent. But it's guiding me just in a different way. It's less organized. It's less compartmentalized. And as such, the spiritual elements to my psyche are not compartmentalizing in that way. And so I may sound like rude and on Twitter or something, or I may sound cranky, but it's not all the time. It's my venting zone. But to stay on topic, enthusiasm. Oh, so we said enthusiasm comes back in Aubergine, but does it really? So my assertion is it seems that way, but it'll only happen for select people. If chances are, if you have a name for being this lofty stage, you will have money. You will feel good in your body. Because it's usually a methodical process to reach the higher tiers of development. Now, someone criticized me earlier on, a couple weeks ago, that development is really complicated. You got to satisfy the needs and make sure that each thing is filled out. And I completely agree with that in theory. And there is one way to bypass the system. There's one way to develop fast. And that's to not be attached to money and business. And the only way to do that is to not to get addicted to it and not to fall into societal pressure. Which is, Orange is actually tapping into the bottom right quadrant in their own way. They believe unspokenly that it's important to believe in capitalism as ideal, so you can thrive and feel motivated and take action. These are minutiae that you really want to investigate to make sure is not in play. In my spherical map, you'll have things that go into each other. On the negative side, there's going to be an orb to be able to track like when and why and how someone's falling into a different area. It's no longer called quadrants. It's a different word because you've curved the map. So maybe we'll call it NURB because that's one of the programs to be able to do it. We'll call it the NURB map. But it doesn't fall off the tongue, so maybe we'll change it up. But the idea is things go into one another, and pinpointing these things are tricky. Now, when it comes to enthusiasm, and when it comes to development, you want to make sure the secret is you're not attached to money. And so the main people who are able to do this are in a situation like mine. Either they have something undiagnosed, they have a disability, or they have some kind of disadvantage, and they're kind of stuck. They don't have the financial independence that they're searching for. And so they've given up on the financial independence, and they just decided to develop themselves. So in that case, what happens is there's a pyramid, right? There's always this actualization point at the top of the pyramid that they just can't reach. And technically there's transcendence. So what happens is actualization and transcendence are directly correlated. So basically the person who not bypasses, but the way to get around the system so you can develop really high is you stop being attached to money and you say, although I didn't make money, I'm proud of myself for having made a phone call and gotten someone to hear me out. So when you're happy with yourself and you feel, not delusional, you just feel like you made some progress, then you've moved up in your own world. Okay, so even though you're not advancing with entire societies of how they generally advance, you're advancing with the specific needs that you require. So this is very complicated. So this requires videos on how to do this. Because remember, you don't want to trick yourself. But what's going to end up happening is you're going to end up quitting your job, and you're going to end up having minimal income, and you will evolve and you will develop, and your brain will change, and you'll be able to have skills that you never had and superpowers. But what are you sacrificing? You're sacrificing stage orange standard living. And you have to ask yourself if that's the path you want to do. I know some people that rather spend the whole year staying in a coral, maybe even 5 years staying between turquoise and the early teal violet stage, because there's no rush. What's the point to prove that these things happen to the brain on a broad spectrum of people? So yeah, some people are interested in that. But I don't think you should try to make yourself an experiment. If you feel this is your path, you should do it. Now, if you do this path, you want to make sure you have enough money to survive for the next 10 years. Because people who are advancing and focusing solely on development with this fashion have given up on getting a job because it's just not working. They will have a harder time than other people. Unless, of course, we have UBI and some more socialist thinking happening in society, and probably a different president that cares more about these types of things than people like us, or caters to the population of developmental psychology who are not stuck in orange and marketing focuses. So that will benefit us, but there's no telling what will happen. So you can't rely on a miracle, right? So the enthusiasm comes when you do. So enthusiasm has a different spectrum of things. So you have enthusiasm because you're doing what you love to. Like right now, I'm enthusiastic because I enjoy talking about it. So you want to talk about what you enjoy doing. You want to talk about what you like, and so you'll feel more into it, and that'll also help people listen to you. You'll be more in the moment and capture people's attention. Be more charismatic. So there's that aspect of pulling people in because of charisma. Because you're focusing on what you like to do. But there's also the aspect of being enthusiastic because you have the energy to feel enthusiasm. It's not just luck and finding a topic you enjoy and you happen to like speaking and getting things off your chest or teaching. Rather, it's you enjoy, you feel good in what you've accomplished. So esteem. So esteem is before actualization. So if you feel good about what you're contributing, or if you feel good around the people that you're the community that you're part of, right? Recently, I didn't feel so good with my community. I didn't feel like I was really offering back. I wasn't getting enough emails back. I wasn't sure people were taking me seriously, and that really hurt me, because I really need this. And what I sense is that people are mostly in stage orange, so they say, "Oh, he wants to make money. He wants to get paid so badly. That's such a turnoff for us. He's not prosperous already, so we don't want to invest in him." So all these people are ignoring my emails, ignoring my calls, ignoring what I have to say, simply because I fall into this category of people who didn't make it. So if you didn't make it already, we don't want to have anything to do with you. So I'm excluded based on that whole thing, based on that idea. And then you have people that are falling into the pre-selection principle. Oh, if he's not already famous, we won't support him. He didn't make it. So there's basically cliques and clubs, and that's why I believe Stage Orange is mostly bottom right quadrant. And the Stage Oranges that are not bottom right quadrant, they're usually bottom left quadrant. So recently so Jordan Peterson used to fall. He really cares about people thriving in society. So I used to think he was in bottom left, then I realized he was in upper right. He was hyper logical. And then I realized he just shifted to the upper left. So he's moving into stage choral in his own way, because he still has his own opinions, but he's definitely moving to stage choral. But I noticed about him is you always had some bottom left. So there's the multidimensional component that will eventually be figured out, and the negatives and positives. But what I want to focus on is the idea that the reason why he's so sensitive is because he always had bottom left, and he was mostly centered. A lot of people, and there's probably a balancing act going on unconsciously. When we're too this way, too that way, our subconscious tries to push us towards the middle, even if we can't make it. We're struggling to make it to the middle. We're trying to get there automatically. So why did I bring it up? Was he enthusiastic? That's the question. The topic was enthusiasm, but I wanted to know, esteem. People didn't get back to me. There's a few things. I can't remember what the whole thing was. Okay, so if you feel like you have esteem, then you'll move into actualization, because these things flow into each other. Oh, and with me, that's what I wanted to say earlier. I didn't have, there's no way for me to make money. So you're held back with your actualization, so it's a whole different ballgame. But in general, there's supposed to be a system where you can do this without having to bypass a whole part of the, having to adopt a whole different chart system. So my system of advancing is rare, and I don't recommend it. It's complicated, and you're probably not gonna succeed at it unless you're in a similar situation as me, which is not that common. And if you want, to, so that will require, if you have a steady paying job, 9 to 5, or even whatever regular schedule you have, I can teach you how you may be able to advance, but I'm not that interested in rigid formats right now. But I'll have to think about it for 20 minutes and then make a chart and give it recommendations. My work is mostly, my recommendations about development is mostly for people who are not planning on doing the same thing every day for the next 20 years. It's for people who are willing to be spontaneous, for willing to change up their schedule, for willing to say what they want to say. So that's another reason why I think Jordan Peterson's entering into choral, because he's cursing more. He never used to curse that much, and he's kind of getting frustrated, sure, but I think it's also part of the transition to choral. Now, did I have something to do with this? Because I've been sending him and a bunch of people emails for a long time, maybe. I'm not sure. I don't know if he's been analyzing any of this stuff. But it does make me wonder, because it means I'm having a contribution. Okay, so that covers how to be, how enthusiasm connects with development. So in conclusion, it's mostly an actualization process. When you're getting into the actualization zone, you're really into your work and you're just doing action. But it also has to do with loving life, loving what you love to do. But this is much harder if you don't have an income. And most later tiers are not enthusiastic because they're not supported by society to make money, to be given an assistance, to have an understanding of how the brain works, of how development might work, probably works. To consider the complexities of how development takes place or might take place. That is not there, and so there's a lot of frustration. Being in debt is a big frustration. When I say most people, when they come across me, say, "Oh, you're in debt? You should get out of debt. It's your responsibility." Have you been reading Tony Robbins? Yes, I've been reading Tony Robbins. I've read 2 of his books in like the past 3 months. Don't give me this, you're not working hard enough. But really, that attitude is a stage orange attitude. You're adopting the old-fashioned mindset. You got to get past that. Of course, it involves changing the system, not just being obedient in society. It requires having a voice, standing up, speaking out, getting people realizing that there are those suffering out there, and you can't be ignorant to it, and you can't be apathetic and ignore them. And that's going to require something that resonates as stage green, perhaps, or something that resonates as defiant towards the system. It goes against the bottom right quadrant. It's going to go against the upper right quadrant because it's non-conventional. And it's radical because it's part of the upper left quadrant, which is always a turnoff to the right hemisphere quadrants, and even the bottom left, who doesn't like it. So it is a tough game. This is a losing battle, and that's why when you do development work, you're in a losing battle. If you don't have money, and if you don't fit into stage orange. And that's why I see people mastering stage orange. That's the least you should be focusing on. But whatever, if you want to, stage orange on a bad stage, but there's so much more potential in all these other stages. Why choose stage orange to go back to? It's so unnecessary. It's so you can use your energy and your drive and your momentum so much better than supporting classic stage orange themes that we've had for like 50 years in America. It's like, we're tired of it. We need a change, and people are suffering. That's what's going to change it. Yes, Tony Robbins did a great job feeding, and he should continue. And it was his attitude that got millions of people fed. But if people are not being fed and not being taken care of in their own country, Why are you giving millions of dollars to people across the seas? So, it's just a criticism to Tony Robbins to kind of recognize, yes, you have all this enthusiasm to look good, but you don't have enthusiasm to change your views, to seem a little liberal, to the point where people like me can get assisted. All right, have a great day, everyone. I hope you enjoyed.